This morning, we find ourselves in week 6, believe it or not, of our Dreamer series. We're talking about the story of Joseph, who's a real person who lived really in history in the 2nd BC, and he had some famous lineage. There was his great-great-grandfather Abraham, and then great-grandfather grandfather Isaac, and then his father Jacob, and then there was him Joseph, and he was the 11th son. He had 10 older brothers, one younger brother, Benjamin, and a sister, and the family was kind of screwed up. We've talked about this in series past, so if you find yourself just joining us or you've missed a couple again, you can go on our website and watch the videos of those. But as we begin this morning, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever wanted to be someone else? Have you ever seen a person or an athlete or an intellect or an author, like anybody, and be like, man, I wish I could be like them. I wish I were them. I wish I could have that career. I wish I could be where they are, what they have, who they are, what they got, that secret sauce. I wish I had some of that. I wish that was more like me. I wish I was more like that. But you knew in your mind, in your heart of hearts, that you're like, I don't think that's going to be me. I don't think I actually am going to get there. I think that's their story, their journey, but I'm not quite ready for that yet. I'm not quite there yet because who they are and what they are and where they are just seems so foreign. It seems so out of touch because when I compare myself with somebody who I admire, who I look up to, who I think is amazing, a place in life, a journey, and I compare it to mine, I'm like, they're just so different. Just the chasm in between is just too great. How could my life ever end up, or my personality or my personhood be like them? But here's the truth. It can be pretty crazy when you see who someone presently is and where they currently are, and you do the journey. You do the timeline. You do the genealogy. You go back and say, well, this is who they and where they are now, but it wasn't always this way. And you look and see the struggles and the trials and the process and the progress that has been made along the journey. And you say, man, how far they were away when they started. See, it would be life-changing for us, this perspective, I think, if we were to always do that, but we don't. We see people for who they are and where they are presently, and we're like, well, I'm not that presently, so I feel bad. But the truth is, if we were to stop and we were to say, okay, I can admire someone, I can pine for someone, I can envy someone, but what if we currently look at them and we look at ourselves and say, but maybe I'm where they were 10 years ago. Maybe I'm who they were 5 years ago. Or maybe there is hope in the process and there's progress that is possible. What if it is? Because when we look at our present situation at times, our circumstance, our reality, and we compare it to theirs, we say, well, I'm just too different. My marriage could never be like that marriage. I mean, that marriage seems like a fairy tale marriage. My marriage is nothing like that. How would we even get there? That I don't even know the road to there. My career could never match that. My character, my physical body, my health, my spiritual maturity, just not good enough. I just don't know how that would even pan out. How does that even work? And what if you're right? What if you're not good enough? What if you can't actually make it? What if you haven't lived the journey? What if you don't have the knowledge or the ability? What if? And that's a scary what if, because then we're forced to settle with who and what we are, which we don't presently like. And then we say, well, are you taking the what if away? I'm not. I'm just saying, what if the experiences you've had up until this point in your life, up until this morning, up until today? What if who you've been, what you've seen, what you've known, what you've learned up until this morning isn't good enough to be that, is not enough to get there? There's something missing. There's something that is lacking, but not all hope is lost. There's a possibility still, and we're going to talk about that. How many guys were up here for the 4th? You guys stayed local for the 4th? You came up for the 4th? Yeah, we had a great 4th of July. I woke up early, went to Jack's at the Tracks for breakfast, then met some of our friends down in front of Nate's place on Donner Pass Road. I just call it Main Street. And we were there, saw the parade. That was great. Then we went paddle boarding on Prosser, and then we had a barbecue, had some friends sleep over. Great. Awesome day. The next morning, just relaxing. Hey, just thinking about how good that day was. And then something happened. I'm sitting on the deck, and I'm reading a book. Kate's running an errand. And my one son is inside sleeping. He's sick. And my 2 girls are outside playing, and I hear this crash. I hear this glass break. And when you're a parent, when you hear like a boom or a crash, you experience like boom, ah, and you're like, oh, it's okay. Everything's all right. But when you hear like a boom or a crash and there's just absolute silence, then you get a little worried. And so this was just, 2 days ago, Friday morning. And so I dropped the book and I go look, and Violet's standing there, or sitting, kneeling, and she stands up and turns around, and there's just blood gushing out of her hands. And I knew that wasn't good. And so what I did was I ran over to her, picked her up out of all the broken glass, set her on the deck, and she's as white as a ghost. She's not crying, she's not yelling, she's not talking, she's just looking at all the blood. And she had cut 2 of her fingers pretty good on this glass. And so I grab her fingers with my hand and just try to stop all the blood, all the bleeding. And I say, hey, Violet, come on over to me and have a seat right here. So she sits down. I say, hold your wrist with your other hand and put it up against your chest, elevate that. And then I want you to squeeze these fingers yourself. So she's squeezing like the split open fingers herself, and she's sitting there and just like nodding, doing it. Then I turn to her twin sister, Torrin, who's also 6, and I say, Torrin, I want you to go inside and grab my phone real quick. So she runs in, comes back, gives me my phone. I call Kate, and I go, Kate, how far are you? She's like, 4 minutes. I go, everything's going to be okay, but she's got some pretty deep cuts. I think she's going to need some stitches. She got to go to the emergency room. Can you come back and pick her up? She said, sure, I'll be right there. Then I go to Torrin, and I say, Torrin, can you go get the first aid kit? Torrin says, sure. She runs inside, comes back, has the first aid kit. Then I say, okay, I need to open these things. I do all this stuff. She helps me. Violet listens. Kate pulls up, and when she pulls up, she's already on the phone. She's like, I already called the pediatric office. They don't want to do stitches today, so we're going to go to Tahoe.Church Hospital for the emergency. I mean, like, Kate's already on it, calling all the right numbers. Torrin's running inside, knows where the phone is, got the emergency room. Violet's staying calm under pressure, squeezing her own fingers, like the wound, like just squeezing it closed with her other bare fingers. And, like, the family is working in clockwork, and Sullivan's inside sleeping, knows nothing's happening, right? Now, I also then, right when that was done, Kate took Violet, put her in the car, sent her off, and I go, hey, Kate, play Violet's favorite playlist. Kate's like, I'm on it. I already got it on YouTube. Violet, watch this video as I take you to the hospital so you can laugh. We're like, keep your hand up to your chest. And then I go inside, and I text my parents immediately, pray that there's no nerve or tendon damage. I text our lead team, say, pray that she still has use of her fingers, that the wounds aren't too deep because they looked really bad. And then after that, we didn't skip a beat. That was it. Then Kate texts me every 10 minutes updates of what's going on. Then she goes, sees the doctor. They are able to fix it. There's no permanent nerve damage. And she's good. She's good. But here's what I want to tell you is you would say, wow, like, is your family just have like blood in their veins? Are you guys just like so cool and calm under pressure? Like how does that work? Well, I'll say this. We as a family knew what to do and how to do it. And you might say, how? Like, have you gone through all these drills, all these simulators? No. Did we practice? No. But my family's experienced some really bad times. As you can tell, we've had some painful times, some scary, some dark times. And because we've experienced those emergencies previous, when another one happens on a Friday morning, we have toughened skin. We have strengthened resolve. They've made us into an absolute machine. Now, people say, oh, I would go back and do it all over again. All the stuff that has prepared us for like that Friday morning so we didn't even flinch, we knew exactly what to do, I would never do again. I wish we didn't see half the doctors that we saw. I wish my family's picture was not on half the doctor's offices that they're on. I wish that my kids didn't have half the scars on their bodies from PICC lines and IVs and emergencies, and I wish 911 didn't know my address back in Thousand Oaks. I wish all those things. But the truth is, because of all of those things, we have become better. We have become more. Because of the dark encounters we have experienced and tasted, the bitterness of, the venom of, it makes us more. If you have your Bibles this morning, turn with me to Genesis chapter 41. That's where we find ourselves in the story of Joseph. So grateful for Pastor Mike for leading us up to this place from last week. And I'll give you some context, but I want to read the verse first. Genesis chapter 41, verse 39. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, Pharaoh himself said to Joseph, since God has shown you all this, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. Wow, this is quite the compliment. At this moment in history for this man, the most powerful person on the planet, the greatest empire that is currently on the planet. Pharaoh is in charge of all of it. And he invites Joseph out of the dungeon to come and stand before him on his golden throne. So Pharaoh's sitting there, most powerful person on the planet, known planet. Joseph is standing before him, and Pharaoh asks him to interpret his dream. God gives Joseph the meaning, and Pharaoh then says to Joseph, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. There is no one, not one person, out of the billions on the planet at that time, not one person can even hold a candle to how discerning and how wise you are. You are the most, you are the best. Now that's an unbelievable a compliment. One, because of who it's from, which is Pharaoh, but secondly, because of who it's to, which is Joseph. Because does Pharaoh know who he's talking to? Does he have the right Joseph? Is he sure this is the correct guy? Because the Joseph standing in front of him is the same one who would tell his 10, not just 2, 10 older brothers that he was their dad's favorite. Hey, you guys know how we all have like a different mom, but we got the same dad? Yeah, well, he loves me the best. He loves me the most. He says he likes my blue eyes better than your brown. He loves me. Daddy, I'm daddy's boy. You guys, you have his DNA, but he doesn't love you as much as me. This is what he would say. He would prance around in a special coat that his dad made just for him. Hey, everybody, it's present time. Everybody come around, all 12 brothers. Everybody come here. Everybody, Joseph, sit in the middle. Is it my birthday? No, I just love you more than everybody. Everybody come on in. Everybody watch Joseph open this present. It's a coat with many colors and long sleeves. Now, everybody cheer Joseph's name because he's so awesome. Oh, no, there's no presents coming for any of you. But for Joseph, he's the best. None of his brothers received the presents. And then he would flaunt the long sleeves. You know what these sleeves mean? No work. No work. You all have to go out to the sheep. You have to shovel the dung. You have to bring all the feed. But these long sleeves, they'll get dirty if I try to do that. These bright, shiny clothes don't wash themselves, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and hang back and be the manager of my 10 older brothers on the family business because Daddy loves me more. Get to work. And when all of his older brothers were working in the mud with the scent of the animals, Joseph didn't have to do any work. But his dad goes, hey, I got an idea. I mean, you and I have been playing Xbox all day. Why don't you go out to the field because they're all sweating in the mid-noon sun. Like, why don't you go out to the field and just kind of give them some direction? Oh, Reuben. If I told you once, I've told you 100 times. Shovel the poop this way. Oh, Judah. Come on. When you're going to strangle the sheep, strangle it with both hands, right? Or whatever it is. And then Dad says, now come back and tell on them. Come back and snitch on them. If they've done anything wrong, come and tell on them, and then I'll punish them when they get in from work. That's what Joseph's job was. That's what Joseph did. Even his own parents had some questions about him. He told his whole family that they would all orbit around him. You've heard of geocentric and heliocentric orbiting solar system, right? He's like, no, it's a me-centric system. Forget the sun, the moon, the stars. In fact, you all were here put on this earth to kind of serve me, and in fact, you're going to bow down to me, and I'm going to be the leader of all of you. Like, he actually said these words to not only his siblings, but to his parents, his entire family, and even his parents were like, hey, we spoiled you, but can you take like the spoiled brat from a 10 like down to a 6? Can we just chill out a little bit? You probably shouldn't say stuff like that. So we would assume that Joseph would take the hint. Hey, Joseph, you're kind of lighting a fire that might burn you. Chill out. You're turning your entire family against you. You become just a teeny, itty-bitty entitled. So again, we find his brothers out working in the dirt with the dingy animals. Here comes Joseph yet again to prance around in his fancy coat, never lift a finger. Can't get dirty. He's the favorite. Can't get one callus. He's coming to give orders. He's coming to judge their work and to tell on them again so they might get in trouble. So are we really surprised moments later when he finds himself stripped naked, thrown in an empty well in a hole that his brothers pushed him in, hoping that he might die? Like, are we really surprised? And I think the real question should be, is Joseph really surprised? Like, is he that dense? Is he that slow? Is he that ignorant? Is his social EQ so subpar that he couldn't see this storm brewing? He really thought that this was going to carry on and they would be okay with this kind of behavior. I mean, really, did Joseph not see this coming. And now we have the most powerful person on the planet, fast forward a little bit, sitting on the golden throne of Egypt, and Pharaoh himself, is telling Joseph, verse 39, so Pharaoh says to Joseph, since God has shown you all this, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. He couldn't discern that he was making his brothers angry. He couldn't discern that he was a little spoiled. He couldn't discern that it was probably bad to be alone out in the field with the 10 guys that hate you the most. He couldn't discern that his language was getting a little offensive. He couldn't discern that, and he wasn't wise enough to step out of that situation. So I have to ask myself, either the Bible is wrong, either Pharaoh is completely wrong, because Joseph is not the most discerning person on the planet, and he's definitely not the wisest. So we must ask ourselves the question, well, what on earth has happened? What cosmic shift has taken place to alter reality in such an extreme way? How does Joseph go from prancing around in the long robe to now being considered by the most powerful person on the planet, the most discerning and wise person he's ever met? How is that possible? How does something like that happen? How did we go from naked Joseph in a dirt hole surrounded by hate-filled brothers who've all had enough to Joseph, the best in all the land? So what happened in between? What happened? Well, I'll tell you, 13 years happened. 13 long years happened. 13 dark, trying, tough years happened. Spoiled Joseph with the jacket telling everyone they're going to bow down to him, never worked a day in his life. That Joseph is 17-year-old Joseph. 17 years old. Have you met a couple 17-year-olds like that? Were you a 17-year-old like that? Are you a 17? No, I'm just kidding. And the man who's standing before Pharaoh, he's 30-year-old Joseph. So you can say, wait a second. He was like that when he was 17? And then he's like this when he's 30? There's hope for me yet. There's hope for my spouse yet. There's hope for my kid yet. There's hope yet, but guess what? Those 13 years aren't just like a magic bullet, a secret pill. You can't just fast forward and fly through those. Those are 13 hard-fought years. But wow, the outcome on the other side, breathtaking, magnificent, brilliant. Genesis chapter 41, verse 46, at the end of this little pericope, this passage in Scripture, says, Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. 30 years old when he met Pharaoh. When he enters his service, in 13 years, a lot has changed. In 13 years, Joseph has gone from spoiled, entitled, lazy, favored by daddy, to a mere product to be sold by human traffickers. No, you don't have a name. Don't open your mouth or it's going to get slapped again. Try to run away. We'll cut off a finger for each mile you get away from us. You're a product now. I'm selling you for 20 pieces of silver, so shut up and do what you're told for your next slave master. That's what Joseph became. From the favored 17-year-old to a mere product to be sold as a slave with no name. He's just a product now. Then he becomes a slave for a master who buys him. Then he begins working, scrubbing on his hands and his knees in somebody else's home, actually getting calluses, cuts, bruises that he's avoided all his life. He could have been a tough farm boy going into this situation. His dad had a rough outdoor business, but he didn't want to get his hands dirty, so he didn't have one callus. So it was a lot of break and blister time. It was a lot of keep your mouth shut and do what you're told time. It's a lot of getting beatings from your slave master time for Joseph. I bet 18, 19, 20, hard years. Hard, steep learning curve for this kid. Sleeping on the silk sheets to now being a beaten slave, a piece of property. So he starts working long shifts. Starts working overtime, starts working manual labor, starts doing exactly what he's told, how it's told, when it is told. But he starts gaining experience. He begins to start caring for the other slaves that are on their knees with him, earning their favor and their respect, giving them help when they need it, giving them support when they need it. And guess what? People start noticing that he has some kind of leadership ability. And he gets a promotion. And then he gets another promotion. And now he becomes slave, still a slave, but manager of the other slaves. He's learning to keep his mouth shut and just work. And then he starts getting sexually harassed by the boss's wife. Then he gets tempted and he gets this offer, this proposal that he could have an affair with his boss's wife and nobody would know. And it would go well for him in his career if he did. So he has this moral, this ethical dilemma. Do I give in to the lust, the carnal desires that I have, also the selfish desires of this really securing a place of leadership for me with my boss? But he says no. He resists it. Sexually assaulted by her, he runs away, and then he's falsely accused as a rapist. And you're like, oh, she's just saying that. It's a lie. Yeah, but nobody else knows it. And the accusation was so bad, he gets thrown into the dungeon. The dungeon, falsely accused. So there he is. And now he's gone from a product to a slave down to a prisoner. And now he starts all over again. I mean, he worked for years to earn his old master's trust. He worked for years at Potiphar's house to work his way up to a management level position in the slavehood, to work his way up in promotions, and he finds himself down at the bottom again. But this time, you're not just a slave in an estate. You're actually a convicted felon, a criminal. We all know you're a terrible person. You did it. In court, you were found guilty, and now you got hard time to serve, and there's no getting out. There's no getting out. You're here for life, man. That's it. You're a lifer, so what are you going to do? Well, at that point, he could just give up and say, well, I worked my way up. I did everything right. Potiphar's house. I even said no to his wife, and this is what I get. I get thrown into the bottom again. I've already been in the bottom. I don't want to be in the bottom again. So what does Joseph do? He begins to work his way up from the bottom again. He earns the trust of his master again. He receives promotion after promotion again. And then does he get the reward? Does he earn his freedom? No, nothing happens. It plateaus. What? But he does everything right over and over again, and then nothing happens? That's right. It plateaus for 13 years. 13 years, nothing. Still in the dungeon, still in the dungeon, still in the dungeon. And then when he turns 30, he's finally given his ultimate big break, right? His metaphorical boat has finally come in. This is it. This is it for him. Now, I want you to really understand the significance of the age 30. How old was Jesus when he began his ministry? Does anybody know? 30. 30 years old. You might say, why did Jesus wait till... So wait a second. Jesus was born in that manger, was 15, 20, 25. Couldn't he have been doing amazing things during his teenage years, his 20s, even his late 20s? Why did he wait till 30 to start opening blind eyes, preaching to thousands, and changing the course of humanity? Why did he wait till 30? It's Jesus. Isn't that a waste of 29 years? I've asked that question. And here's the only answer the Bible gives us. Luke chapter 2, verse 52. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in years and in divine and human favor. That's what he was doing up until he was age 30. He was increasing in wisdom and in years and in divine and human favor. Do you know what age you needed to be to become a rabbi? A rabbi was a teacher of the law that would have disciples, students follow him. Almost like a pastor almost. He'd have his own disciples, his students. You know how old you had to be to become officially, legally a rabbi? 30. Do you know how old you had to be to join the Sanhedrin? Which was the board that would lead all of the Jewish institution, all of the synagogues, all of the temples, all of the stuff that they had, all of their rules, fulfilling the law of Moses, the Pentateuch? 30. Do you know how old the Apostle Paul was when he was top of his Pharisaical class? When he was still Saul of Tarsus? 30. All throughout the scriptures, we see that 30 is the age. 30 is the age. The age of maturity, the age of destiny, the age of position. It basically shows everyone that you've lived enough. You got enough wounds. You got enough scars. You've had enough conversations. You've had enough responsibility. You've experienced and encountered enough to now finally be worth listening to. That's what it was. That was Jewish custom. That's what we see in Scripture. You're finally worth following. You're finally worth obeying. Now, I don't want you to miss this one point that I'm going to tell you right here. Joseph already had the blessing of God in his life. He already had it. His father demonstrated that. Joseph already had the supernatural gifts of God working through him. He had his first visions as a preteen. Not even a teenager yet. He's already having these visions, that God-given visions, dreams, amazing gifts. He knew that he would one day be a leader among many. He knew this as a youth. He knew that already. But he was green, he was untested, he was immature, and he was unwise. So even though he had this unbelievable God-given gift, he didn't know how to handle it. And he said things he shouldn't have. He did things he shouldn't have. He got too excited about things he shouldn't have, and he ruined it. That's what's so crazy. God gave him this amazing gift, and he actually used it as a weapon against his brothers and his dad, and it actually fractured his family and almost cost him his very life. Something good from God was used in an evil way. And we might say, well, he didn't know that he was doing it in an evil way. Yeah, but in an ignorant way can also bring as much harm as evil. There's no question he was anointed by God, but he wasn't yet ready to lead. He was using his gift incorrectly. Here's what's interesting. I grew up in church, and I volunteered in my youth group when I was in high school. I loved the Bible study in my local high school. I was a peer leader on Sunday mornings for small group discussion. I was in the band. I would do all this stuff. And then all through college, I did the same type of thing. I was a volunteer leader in the youth group. And then I interned at the church. And I had been volunteering at the church for 7 years in the high school ministry when I was finally offered an opportunity to come on staff as a director in the high school. Then I did that for another year and a half before I became a pastor. And the truth is, even at that point, did I have a love, a passion for high school students? No. Did I have a passion specifically for middle school students? No. I had a passion for people. And I knew that God loved them, and they needed to hear that, and they needed to see that. But as a 21-year-old, what was I most, and who was I most relevant to? Teenagers, middle school students. I didn't have any adult experience yet. I had no adult wisdom to give married couples on their marriage or how to parent. I didn't know any of that. I knew that I had been a teenager 4 years ago, and so maybe I could help them as a former teenager. And so I was a youth pastor for almost 6 years. Why? Because I had this insatiable passion for teens? No. Because it's the only demographic that God entrusted me with, because it was the only responsibility I could handle. And I loved them well, and I still love teens. I mean, but not more than any other age group. I love senior citizens as much as I love an infant. God loves everyone. And so sometimes we say, God, why haven't you entrusted me to more? Why haven't you entrusted me? Because you're not ready yet. You haven't experienced enough yet. You haven't encountered enough yet. See, Joseph still needed more journey, more trial, more pain, more years, more calluses. He needed to be humbled and sold as a product. If I were to see in Scripture, I mean, it's really hard to compare another teenager that is as prideful and entitled as Joseph. He probably takes the cake. He needed to work his way up with no special treatment or favor because he was handed the golden ring as soon as he was born. He needed to be cheated and slandered. He needed to start over again in prison. He needed to be assured that his promotions were not from flukes or favoritism, but were from God himself. He needed that assurance. You know what? He can make it as a slave. He's tough enough now. He can make it as a prisoner. He's got the grit and the faith now. So now he stands before Pharaoh as a leader with a coat of armor that has dents and dings and scratches and rust and dried blood all over it. He's been to battle. He's experienced hardship. He's experienced 13 years of unbelievable war. He's experienced it and tasted it. So now that he's standing before Pharaoh, the strongest, most powerful person in the world, is he scared? No. He's ready. Because those 13 years have prepared him. Now, if you put 17-year-old Joseph, there's going to be a problem. But this isn't 17-year-old Joseph. This is 30-year-old Joseph. This isn't his first promotion. Finally, after all these years, 30 years old, he's finally able to wield and properly and accurately use his God-given gifts the right way at the right time. See, the words of Pharaoh are not true. of 17-year-old Joseph. He's not the most discerning and the wisest of all. He's not. But 30-year-old Joseph is not only anointed by God, he's a proven, tested leader who is capable and ready to be second in command over all of Egypt. And what did it take for that transformation to happen? 13 years of some real serious stuff. Genesis 41, verse 40 through 46. Pharaoh is speaking to Joseph. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only with regard to the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Removing his signet ring from his hand, Pharaoh put it on Joseph's hand. He arrayed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. This time he actually deserved it. When his dad gave it to him when he was a teenager, he didn't deserve it. It's interesting, right? He's getting the garments and he's getting jewelry again. He had him ride in the chariot of his second in command, and they cried out in front of him, bow the knee. Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent, no one shall lift up hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh gave Joseph the name, and I'd like Joseph better, Zaphanath Paneah. Can I just stick with J, little j? Is that okay? And he gave him Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, as his wife. Thus Joseph gained authority over the land of Egypt. And again, I read this verse. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Did you know that I've wanted to write a book since I was 24 years old? And I began writing it, and there was a few good chapters, and they were based out of sermons that I've taught, and all my insights were interpretations of passages from Scripture, which is good, but I was missing something. I was missing story. See, I'd only been married for a year up until that point. I'd only been at the same church, born and raised as a fetus my entire life, and all of my stories were from my youth. They were from 22 years old and younger. I had no adult stories yet, and the rest of the stories were someone else's, right? So now that I'm 38 and have experienced my own journey, I believe that maybe a book might be worth reading, maybe. Do you know I desired to be a lead pastor at age 30? And I didn't become one until I moved here to lead Tahoe.Church. And the truth was, and is, that I felt a little insecure about it. Jesus was 30 when he started his ministry. Paul was 30 when he was in the Sanhedrin. We just read that Joseph was 30 when he began to rule Egypt, so I had reservations. The truth is, on my 31st birthday, I felt insecure and bad. I felt like I hadn't accomplished enough because I knew what the number 30 meant. And when I was 31, I was an old man now. And I had missed it. I had missed my window, my opportunity of greatness. But guess what? I am not Joseph. And I am not Paul. And I am definitely not Jesus. Did you hear me say that? I am definitely not. I'm a slower learner than all of them. But I do know who I am. I'm a product of a Christian home, an obedient, compassionate kid, a questioning teenager who serves and volunteers. I was a college graduate with honors. I traveled to some poorest cities and towns and villages of our present world. I've lived in some of the most affluent and some of the most poverty-stricken neighborhoods in our entire country. And I've been a pastor at 4 different churches and a community center. And I'm still imperfect in learning. I still have a long way to go. Yet I can tell you that I'm ready for what God has currently entrusted me. And I'm looking forward to what he will continue to trust me with in the future. My wife has helped me grow, even though I've asked her not to. My 3 children have helped me grow. Kids tend to do that, whether you like it or not. And many of you here have helped me grow. So we're all growing together, and God will entrust certain people, certain places, certain roles, and certain resources to us when we are ready. So I have questions for you. Have you thanked God for what he has brought you through? What do your 13 years look like? Have you already lived them, or are you living them now? Are you right in the middle? Are you almost on your way out, or are you about to enter them? Have you thanked God for what he has brought you through, the flames, the fires, the ashes, and the trials, not just cursing his name because they've happened, but saying, God, thank you that you've entrusted me with the ability to grow stronger, better, and more? Have you thanked God for what he's already entrusted to you? Are you currently asking God for what he will entrust to you in the future? In closing, I want to say this. If God uses you and has used you in this way at 17, I can't wait to see how he's going to use you at 30. And if God has used you this way at 30, I can't wait to see the way that he's going to use you at 45. And if God has entrusted this much to you when you were 45, I can't wait to see how much he will entrust you when you're 60. And if God has used you this way when you're 60, I can't wait to see how God will use you at 75. See, I believe that the best is always yet to come for a follower of Jesus. I was just talking to our friends over 4th of July, and it's funny because we've been reading our kids Little House in the Big Woods. Laura Ingalls Wilder, and they've been watching Little House on the Prairie. Is that even on Netflix? How do you find that? Anyway, Michael Landon, shout out. Anyway, so Laura Ingalls Wilder, growing up, she repeatedly moved from place to place to place with the desire to help her family, so she decided to become a teacher, a school teacher. But she quit teaching when she got married because she needed to help her husband on the farm. Then following the tragic death of their 1-month-old son, her husband became partially paralyzed. She was 43. Her daughter Rose came up to her when she was in her mid-40s, and she encouraged her to write a memoir about her childhood. Her first attempt of writing her autobiography was rejected multiple times. Determined to succeed, she spent the next several years improving it. The publishers finally agreed to print her work in the form of a fictional story for young children. Laura was 65 years old when Little House in the Big Woods was finally published for the first time. 65. She wrote other Little House series, including the last one that came out at age 76. Other books, other series, TV shows, movies, spin-offs, all from her story that everybody told her was not important enough except for her little daughter Rose when she was in her mid-40s. And at 76, she is finally the author that she thought she could have been. So I don't know how long the process is for you, and you say, oh, dear Lord, did he just say 76? Hey, maybe it's 17, and you are just, man, top of the class. Maybe it's 20, maybe it's 25, maybe it's 30. But here's the way that I look at life and seasons of life, is that there are losses and there are victories in each season. And I don't know what it was for you in your childhood. I don't know what it was for you in your teen years. I don't know what it was for you in your 20s. And if you're in your 30s now, in your 40s, I don't know what battle and losses have been inflicted upon you, but I do believe that there are victories in each of those areas and each of those life stages. I'm not promising you perfection. I couldn't possibly. I'm not promising you second in command of the largest nation on the planet. That spot's already been taken. But I am promising you that if you are faithful to God and you say, God, please be faithful to me, that He will. He will help you through the 13 years, through the pain, the trials, the flames, the ashes. You can rise like the phoenix. The hope of our God is a free gift to all. We're all brothers and sisters, sons and daughters of the Most High. Take Him at His word. Have faith. Take heart.